Southern whites are up in arms about the state of their times. Scratching their heads, all this talk about black people being liberated, the abolishment of slavery, all their investment in slaves is now gone. And now they're trying to figure out how can they redeem themselves. And so there's this convention trying to galvanize individuals with post the Reconstruction era. And there's this convention, 1898. Miss Harding talked about it. A white man by the name of E.B. Kratznick takes the podium. He's the president. He's an ex-Confederate. There's a room, you saw the picture, full of white delegates, 134 white delegates. Some plantation owners, some ex-Confederates. Mr. Krasnick takes the podium in his introduction. He states, this convention has been called by the people of this state to eliminate from the electorate the mass of corrupt and illiterate voters that have degraded our politics. Ladies and gentlemen, laws are created at that convention, day in, day out, that open up the floodgates of what we know as the Jim Crow era. And one law in particular, as we sit here today, is still on the books. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Much respect for my colleagues, or my soon-to-be friends that I just met today. Mad respect, mad love, mad admiration for you all the work you all do. Thank you, the Delta chapter Baton Rouge, for inviting me to be here. I'll tell you one thing, every time I see a sea of red in the community, I know it's y'all and I know y'all doing great things. I thank y'all from the bottom of my heart for inviting me to be here. And all the guests who are here, I commend y'all for taking the time to be present. Can I talk about the history a little bit? They gave me 20 minutes, 25. Can I break this down a little bit? Let's reverse this a little bit. What led to the convention? Can y'all hear me well? This speaker, I don't want to mess with this speaker. Can y'all hear me? Yeah. Okay. Let's reverse this a little bit. Let's back up. So we know about slavery. We know about the abolishment of slavery. We know about the Emancipation Proclamation. And then there's the 13th Amendment. And there are thousands, over 300,000 of free African Americans. At least that's what they told me. They were free. And as we look at the South in particular, let's look at Louisiana, our beloved state. What's happening? The federal government is overseeing what's happening in the South, and the people of the South, the plantation owners, are saying, how do we rebuild our economy? What is all this talk about freedom? And believe it or not, blacks are now being allowed to vote and are elected officials. These white Southerners are scratching their head, and they're trying to figure out ways, how can we work around this abolishment of slavery? And then there is the 13th Amendment. Ladies and gentlemen, this 13th Amendment is critical. There's a documentary by Ava DuVernay. Some of you may have heard of it, but it explains about the 13th Amendment and the origins and as it relates to the industrial complex of mass incarceration. But these Southern whites, particularly they were called the Bourbon Redeemers in Louisiana, they are looking at the 13th Amendment and they are saying, well, it says slavery is abolished, but what is the next best thing to slavery? And there's a loophole that says if you are convicted, you can then be considered, for lack of a better term, a slave. And so they're getting savvy. These Southern whites are getting savvy, and they're trying to get these individuals, particularly black individuals, and they're passing these vagrancy laws, laws for not working to get more blacks. And then there's a man by the name of Samuel Lawrence James. Now, Mr. James is an interesting figure because he's an ex-Confederate, and he has a business decision to acquire a plantation that sits on the banks of the Mississippi River. You've probably heard of it. It's called Angola. It's a country in Africa because the slaves that Louisiana acquired were from Angola and Africa. And he acquires this plantation from a slave owner, and he starts to devise a plan where he's now getting more inmates. They used to be white, but now there's an abolishment of slavery. There are more and more black individuals. But it's not enough. It's not enough. And supply has to meet demand. African Americans are free, but there's so much work to build the economy in Louisiana. And what can we do? This ex-Confederate was very powerful, very influential, had a lot of political friends. He says, some kind of way they devise a scheme where we have this loophole, but we're not getting enough inmates. Not getting enough. These vagrancy laws, we're not quite arresting, we're not quite getting enough convictions. Too many hung juries, there are black people on the jury, and we're not getting enough to meet the demand. And so, ladies and gentlemen, that's when this bill passes. Bill 101. Actually, it was passed a few years before the Constitution. And that bill stated 9 out of the 12 individuals, if the 9 are in agreement, that can be the verdict. irrespective of 3 others who may be dissenting. That's how it started. And this was about 7 years before the convention. The convention made it official. The guy stands on the podium and he says, our mission has been, in the first place, to establish the supremacy of the white race to the extent that it can be legally and constitutionally done. That's what's going on at the convention. And so we have this law, and that's what we're here for. Ms. Hardy eloquently describes all the beautiful things about the law. But let's talk a little bit about what's happening. So many other laws were passed. That 1998, if you remember, 3 years before that, there was a case called Pleasant versus Ferguson, right out of New Orleans. And that case was another case in which these Southern whites were toying with laws, trying to figure out how can we circumvent what the federal government is doing to suppress our power, our social control, our economic control. We got to get savvy. And what do? Now they're trying to figure out, okay. What about if we take the blacks and we put them over here, and we take the whites and we put them over here, but really this means supreme. And what happens if we put the blacks in this car, this railroad, this train car, and we put the whites on this car? Is that legal? That's the Plessy case. That's the Plessy case. The Plessy case that went all the way up to the United States Supreme Court. The Supreme Court said, you know what? I can work with that. I can do that. Separate but equal. Okay. That'll work. Before you knew it, ladies and gentlemen, Pandora's box has opened. James Crowell. But we don't stop. We don't just take it and sit there, right? We're not going to just say, oh, okay, I'm going to get on this bus, right? Rosa Parks is not going to say that, right? And so we're going to fight. We're going to fight, and we're going to have a civil rights movement. And all those laws from that convention, one by one, they're dismantled, one by one, overturned, contested. You know about the civil rights movement. You know about all the organizations, the ACLUs, NAACP. Something fell through the cracks. Something fell through the cracks, ladies and gentlemen. That is the law that we're talking about today. Over time, a lot of lawyers, activists fought, went to the Supreme Court. Supreme Court of the United States said, it's okay. This law is fine. Leave it to the people. Leave it to the people. I don't want to deal with it. We don't have to deal with it. The people have spoken. 1898, the people have spoken. It's not a constitution. The Supreme Court said it's not a constitutional right to have a unanimous jury. That's not our problem. Leave it to the people, ladies and gentlemen. We are now leaving it to the people. I can't stress to you all how important this is. I'm too familiar with this. 10 years, first row seat. This may not be good marketing for me. This may not be good for my resume. I may not want my prospective clients to hear this, but yes, I have represented individuals who I know, at least one for sure, that I lose sleep over, that was innocent. Ms. Gail, I don't want to even talk to you about who you represent, that you believe was innocent. And I'm not saying because they told me, I'm telling you about the evidence that was staring at me in my face. Now what's important, because that particular trial, we went to court, we presented evidence to the jury, there are 12 people in the box. My client is on trial for second-degree murder. His life is hanging in the balance, because if he loses, he's going to Angola for the rest of his life. And I'm fighting, ladies and gentlemen, I'm fighting. I done stayed up every night for almost 3 months. The weight, the pressure of defending someone who you believe is innocent. Could you imagine when I'm presenting my case in front of the jury? And can I tell you that they deliberated until the wee hours of the night. I finished my closing argument. Prosecutor finished her closing argument, his closing argument at about 6 o'clock. It was 3 in the morning, and they're coming back, and they're saying, Judge, we at a standstill. We can't agree. Judge said, y'all go to the back and figure it out. It's getting late. Y'all got to come back with something. Now, why am I telling y'all this? Because what really breaks my heart about this case, and this is just one case. So they come back, and I really believe that they're like, you know what, the state didn't really prove the case. So we're not gonna do second-degree murder and ship him away for the rest of his life. We're gonna come up with a compromise verdict. We're gonna come up with a lesser charge of manslaughter. And so when the judge said, go back and figure something out, they came back, and they came back with manslaughter. But the one thing that really breaks my heart, ladies and gentlemen, there were two individuals who said, I believe that the man was innocent. They were silenced. You saw the PowerPoint. Over 40% exoneration. Individuals dealing with split verdicts. Ladies and gentlemen, this is easy, right? This should be simple. Piece of cake. No brainer. But the problem is this really easy for the individuals who are not here today? What about those who simply don't know? I charge you all, spread the word. See, what happens with mass incarceration and this law, it's not in their face. It's kind of out of sight, out of mind. We don't deal with it until our family member has to deal with it. And so we have to get it in their face. Talk about the history. Tell them what's at stake. Because I agree with Ms. Harmon. When a guilty is charged, when I'm in the booth and I don't quite understand what's going on, and I'm a lawyer, and I'm reading these amendments, and for the first time, I never heard of it. No. Guilty is charged. So could you imagine all the individuals who simply don't know getting some momentum. Yes, there is coverage. I don't think that's enough. There's too much at stake, ladies and gentlemen. I charge you all to get the word out all the way to the finish line, all the way through November 6th. I might be needing you to make some phone calls. Thank you for your time.